Hi, everyone. It's Evangeline here. Welcome to Medical Mondays. As a part of my outreach plan, I'm going to be hosting a show on Mondays starting September the 12th, going to October the 10th. And it is a part of my outreach program because my focus is to provide information to voters and my future constituents regarding healthcare for all. My platform is to see the people in this state be healthier, wealthier, and wiser. I think everyone would agree with me that healthcare is a human right. No one should have to choose between buying medicines and paying for food, or paying a bill, or seeing a doctor. We need better healthcare access, outcomes, and affordability in this state. We're the last of 12 that have still yet to open up our Medicaid exchanges, which would go to benefit a huge portion of South Carolina that are not getting the kind of access that they need to healthcare. So that is why it's at the top of my list. It's very important. The first thing that I will work for when elected will be to push for the Medicaid exchanges to be open, and then ultimately healthcare for all, maybe titled Medicare for all, maybe titled universal healthcare, single payer. But in any case, it's simple. No one in this state, no one in this nation should go without having healthcare. Our Republican governor and his administration, the Republican-led state House and Senate, have been working overtime to keep South Carolinians sick, poor, and ignorant. But they keep getting reelected. Because of bad leadership in this state, South Carolina has not accepted coverage under the Medicaid expansion. And that became available, guys, in January 2014. Yet South Carolina ranks at the bottom for nearly all issues related to healthcare, from access to nutrition, to mental, to physical, and to outcomes. Healthcare for all could change all of that. The topic for today is going to be women's reproductive rights, as well as access to healthcare. And what we know is that the state of South Carolina, the House recently passed a bill, H5399, that is an anti-abortion bill, has very strict laws around it that will restrict women's access to good, affordable health care, as well as our ability to make our own choices. This is about choice. It's not just about women's rights. It's about all rights. They're starting with women, but you better believe they're coming after your rights too. Today, because this is a topic of concern greatly in this state right now, we have a wonderful guest, Dr. Susan Demchak, and she is a board certified OB/GYN. And so she has children being born every day that she's so happy to have come in this world. And a quote that she says is, "Childbirth is a miracle, and it is a privilege to be involved. Working with women to keep them healthy and to help them make their lives better is both rewarding and demanding." She specializes in preventative care, contraception, menopause, prenatal care, labor and delivery, and the treatment of menstrual disorders and polycystic ovary syndrome. She received her medical degree at the Medical University of South Carolina and completed a residency at the Naval Medical Center. When not working, Dr. Demchak enjoys spending time with her husband and two grown sons, which I had the pleasure of meeting one. She is a published writer, having written several plays and a short story that received an honorable mention in the Cotton Alley Writers Review. She's active in legislative advocacy for productive rights, healthcare access, and the empowerment of women. She also enjoys yoga, playing with her dog, stand-up, paddleboarding, and almost any activity on water. Welcome, Dr. Susan Demchak, and thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting to be off and to be able to spend some time with you today.
I will just open up, Susan, by having a topic idea. Obviously, it's the hot button issue of our time right now that's going on. But there's a bigger picture to this, and I'm sure that you can help us understand better why it's so important for us to vote for people who are going to vote for healthcare. So the recent legislation references abortions are legal in circumstances concerning, quote, substantial risk of death for the pregnant woman because of physical condition or the substantial and irreversible physical impairment of a major bodily function of a pregnant woman. That's just a portion of it. So just with that statement, what types of conditions, common or uncommon, does this statement cover? And how do pregnant women need to care for themselves to ensure that they don't have complications?
Well, first of all, Evangeline, I would like to remind everyone that 58% of people, and that this is not a new number, but it was reaffirmed recently in a poll from the Trafalgar Group, recently did a poll in South Carolina that would indicate that 58% of voters believe that abortion in some form should be legal. There is difference across whether it should just be legal in the first trimester or first and second trimester. And there's only a few who really believe that it should be legal all the way up to the end. But the majority believe that abortion should be legal. So I want to first say I would like to see this as a referendum on the ballot before we get into what you're talking about. But I think that our legislators need to know that they are the minority and they're enforcing policies that are not popular. You know, banning abortion completely is not a popular thing to do. Destroying education, public education is not popular. So I think the biggest thing women have to do to keep themselves healthy is to go vote.
Yes, I agree.
Back to and also there is evidence across the board, whether you are in a red state or community or a blue state or community, increased voter participation goes along with better health. Whether it doesn't depend who you're voting for, you know, better voter participation results in better healthcare outcomes. But getting back to what you asked me, because I digressed, in and of itself, pregnancy is a high-risk condition. You are 14 times more likely to die during a pregnancy than you are as a complication of a safe, legal abortion. So there is that in and of itself. There was a study that came out years ago that showed that women who sought abortion care and were turned away were more likely to have bad health outcomes and even death, a higher risk of death during the pregnancy that they sought to not continue than either women who continued the pregnancy or women who sought abortion care and were allowed to have an abortion. And the reason that the women were turned away was because of gestational age limits. So in and of itself, we have to agree that pregnancy in and of itself is a high-risk time in a woman's life, even when she is healthy. Now, there's lots of evidence that women who are not as healthy are more likely to seek abortion care than women who are healthy. But some of the things that you mentioned and some of the things that are carved out in the 5399 bill are things like molar pregnancy, ectopic pregnancy, placental abruption. They make an exception for severe trauma to a woman who has been in an accident or has been physically traumatized. There's a carve out there in the event that she's had a uterine rupture or that the baby has died, which I would certainly hope that the physician would be allowed to assist with the early delivery, because in and of itself, that's a high risk situation. But still, there are no carve outs for women who have severely preterm rupture of membranes. There are no exceptions for fetal anomalies like anencephaly and acrania. Right now, there is a woman in one of the states who is having to continue to gestate with a baby that has acrania, meaning the baby doesn't have a skull. So,
whoa.
It's one of those situations where they don't know what they don't know. And things that the question that you asked, how can a woman make sure she doesn't have one of these conditions, is to seek prenatal care, to seek medical care. Now in South Carolina, 10 counties do not have access to an OBGYN. And OBGYNs tend to cluster around urban centers. And so I think there is a website called scruralhealth.org where you can look and see what the numbers are as far as how many OBGYNs there are per 1,000 people. And so obviously in areas like York County, close to Charlotte, Columbia, Greenville, Charleston, Myrtle Beach, those areas, you have access to care. And then in areas, kind of along the borders and more remote areas, women may have to travel 30 minutes to an hour to get to a physician or a hospital.
Man, you hit on so many issues. You brought up some statistics, and I will tell you that I read an article that stated that South Carolina was voted top 10 of the worst places to live. And the reason for that really centered around mainly two big things. That's healthcare, and that is infrastructure. The healthcare portion and what they're doing to us as women and as minorities, as people who just don't have the kind of coverage that you need for an insurance to take care of all these things, is horrible. And it doesn't have to be that way. The demographics in our state that suffer the most from legislation like the ones that we have. What's been your experience, Susan, and the lack of access and affordability of healthcare in South Carolina?
These type of laws are always going to, they really only apply to poor women. Women of means are going to always have the option to travel out of state. And you have teenage girls coming to see me, refusing to tell me their last menstrual period. They are already hearing not to tell the doctor when the last time their period is. Somebody in her teens, her first visit to the OBGYN, and I asked her when her last period was, and she said, "I don't want to tell you." And I just gave her a knowing smile. You have women that are taking the period tracking apps off of their phone. We don't really know who has access to that, to that data. And there are people in data mining professions that who knows what they're doing with that information and who may come in contact with it. But ultimately, it doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat. If you are a person of means and you or your child or your loved one or your friend needs abortion care, she's going to get it. Another thing that has not been mentioned, that you don't know what you don't know type thing, is the chilling effect that this is going to have on retention of doctors in South Carolina. And even medical students may be choosing not to go into OBGYN because of objection of legislative influence in the practice of medicine. Abortion bans have been condemned by every healthcare, every governing organization, the American College of OBGYN, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Family Physicians, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Medical Association. Across the board, the governing bodies and the bodies that accredit the physicians and surgeons are against these bans because they do more to harm women, and they are, as you said, taking healthcare options away from women and not addressing the root cause of pregnancy, which, 100% of unplanned pregnancies are caused by a man. I will give some credit to Senator Tom Davis. There is a good article in the Fitz News that he wrote, or an editorial. He's a Republican, and he takes the Republican Party to task. I'll quote the deficiencies that he sees: that we need to supplement reproductive health education taught to students in grades 7 through 12 to include age-appropriate, medically adequate instruction in contraception, increase access to hormonal contraceptives, and specifically declare Plan B legal, hold the man involved in creating a pregnancy financially accountable for his sexual behavior both before and after the birth of the baby, facilitate adoptions by making it more affordable for adoptive parents. So there are people within the Republican Party who do seem to, be reasonable and who don't necessarily equate the value of a single-celled organism to a woman who is thinking and has hopes and dreams, and 59% of the time already has children. 59% of women seeking abortion care already have a family at home. If a woman throws a pulmonary embolism during that pregnancy and dies as a complication of an anencephalic pregnancy, who's going to take care of her surviving children? The state of South Carolina. They think that this is some rare event, that it never happens, but unfortunately it does. The thing that most needs to happen is to elect people who are going to allow these difficult decisions to be made by a woman and her doctor.
Yes.
And that's number one. And number two, funding pregnancy so that women survive childbirth. You are less likely to die as a Mexican woman giving birth in Mexico than you are a Black woman giving birth in South Carolina. I have written letters to these legislators for years. I've gone and testified in Senate committees. I don't know what else to do. The only thing left to do is to change the legislatures, because we can't seem to make them understand and listen to reason. And so I hope that people will get out and vote and elect people who listen, who believe in science and who listen to doctors.
I would hope that there will be more people like Tom Davis who can listen.
We also had the viral moment a few weeks ago of Neil Collins.
The second week that the fetal heartbeat bill became law, a doctor called me out of Anderson. I live in Easley. A 19-year-old girl appeared at the ER. She was 15 weeks pregnant. Her water broke, and the fetus was unviable. The standard of care was to advise her that they could extract or she could go home. The attorneys told the doctors that because of the fetal heartbeat bill, because that 15-week-old had a heartbeat, the doctors could not extract. So their only choices were to admit the 19-year-old until that fetal heartbeat stopped. I asked, how long does it take to stop? She said seconds, minutes, hours, maybe days. Or discharge. They discharged that 19-year-old. There's a 50% chance, greater than 50% chance, that she's going to lose her uterus. There's a 10% chance that she will develop sepsis and herself die. That weighs on me. I voted for that bill. These are affecting people.
He had voted for the heartbeat bill.
Yes, and it was heartfelt. His change. Somebody told, he heard about the woman who I think had ruptured membranes at 15 weeks and had been sent home. And, she had been told to go home. She might deliver the baby on the toilet. And it was just very heartbreaking. Graphic. Yeah.
Yes.
And it hit him hard because a doctor friend like you, he said a friend of his who's a doctor really explained it all to him, and he's got a better idea.
Well, and fortunately, he had the humility to listen. But,
and that's what you were talking about.
Even then, it's like, even if that baby, somehow survives till term, the baby can be born and doesn't have lungs, and then, suffocates after birth, or is born with functioning lungs and has severe limb contractures. There are so many unknowns and painful scenarios that we have to navigate with these patients. And some of them do make that very difficult choice. They want to continue the pregnancy, and we support that. We support that. Right. And we take care of them. But even then, you don't necessarily get this happily ever, this outcome that they seem to imagine is going to happen. There's many terrible things that can happen to the mother and the baby. And it's just better to let healthcare providers who are trained and know and have witnessed the different scenarios help these women make decisions, and ultimately to support the woman's decision as far as, do I want to continue this pregnancy or do I not? And there are people who feel very passionately that they want to continue the pregnancy. And our job is to take care of them and keep them as healthy as possible and get the best possible outcome. I think that the most important thing that we can do for children is to give them a healthy mother. I think that we need to be very proactive in addressing maternal mental health issues. There's something that we call in this profession now the fourth trimester. And that is recognizing that our responsibility to a woman and her baby does not end at birth, that we need to be very proactive in screening for postpartum depression. The relationship between the mother and the child can be permanently affected by, the failure of attachment is very, very damaging to a child. So if they care about children and if they care about babies, they will fund mental health and getting more mental health providers and making mental health more affordable, because a lot of time Medicaid doesn't pay for therapy, and it's badly needed. So, we need to be, there are so many things that we need to be addressing, and what we're doing is passing unpopular abortion bans and passing laws to marginalize transgender teens, a group who already has a very high suicide rate. And one thing that you can do to decrease their risk of suicidality is by respecting them, accepting them, recognize them. It ultimately comes down to people doing what they want to do with their reproductive lives.
We got to care for the people that we're marginalizing, and for them to care about a yet to be born life more than the life that is existing today is the problem. I just know that, on a positive note, that at least we can be a force for change in this district and join up with the 6th district. So if our 2 districts can set the path for the rest of the state, and we change our governorship, and we get good people in the House and the Senate in the state, then the people will feel these measures that we're going to take place. Because here's the deal. I want hearts and minds to change too, Susan. But because I haven't seen that happen, I know that we've got to have people in there who start out from the beginning with the right ideas. I am more than grateful and thankful for somebody like you. I thank you so much again for your time today.
Well, thank you. This is therapeutic for me. I hope that your editor is able to use some of it.
The issues in my conversation today with Dr. Demchak mostly affected the laws in South Carolina. I'm running for federal office. I'm running for US Congress. And what we can do on the federal level is we can take the principles of Roe v. Wade and codify it into the law of the land. And that will help a lot, but we must also elect more Democrats here at the state level. So what you can do as a voter is find your Democratic candidate for state representative in your district. And there are a bunch of them here in the 5th Congressional District. And vote for them because they are the people who can make the changes we need here in South Carolina. I want to thank you for watching today, and we'll be back next week with another Medical Monday. I'm Evangeline Hundley, running against Ralph Norman for U.S. House and the South Carolina 5th Congressional District. Come on out and vote for me on November 8th.